Hello, dear book dragons. I know it's still a whole week of August left, but as I have some books to go back to the library and I have to start packing for moving soon, I thought I will do a video now, and I have a lot of books to show you anyway, so I have 10 books that I read so far in August. So I'll probably have maybe 2 more that I'll just add to my September video or something like that. And the first book I read in August was Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. And I haven't read her earlier works, so it's just jumping into this very magical, quirky, very cute, and also annoying. Well, annoying, maybe not the right word, but yeah, evil people. And also charming at the same time, as it often is in fantasy books. Yeah, but I really enjoyed this. Let's see, I gave it 4.5 stars. And look how pretty it is. And well, I finished the third book today, and that's even prettier. Look at this lovely map. It's about a young girl, Evangeline, who loses her true love, as she sees it. And she's grown up quite, had a lovely childhood, but then she lost her mother, and now she's lost her father, and she's living with her stepmom and stepsister. And it's this fantasy world where they hear about the north, where magic exists everywhere, and it's kind of chaotic there. But she lives in the south, where there's no magic really. But in the shop her father had, there was sounds magical. When she describes this shop, it was really magical. That's probably the loveliest part of this book, the way she describes magic and this charming, quirky things, and it's just so lovely, really lovely. And it just happens so many things, so it's kind of difficult to explain what it's about. And I don't want to tell you too much either, because I think you should read it. So maybe I shouldn't talk so much about it, really. And if you already read it, you know what will happen. And if you haven't, I think you should read it. So here it says, never make a deal with fate. And she does do a deal with fate. Jax. And she does go to the north. She meets this fate to help her get her true love back. Well, the person she thinks is her true love. And he's not as, you can't make a good deal with the fate. And as it's called, Once Upon a Broken Heart, it's always something new, tragic things. As long as when something has been fixed, something new, crazy stuff happens. So it's a lot of action and a lot of things going on. And in the second book, The Ballad of Ever After, I would say, is probably even more adventurous and even more shiny stuff on the cover here. Look, there's a little fox. Evangeline is Jax's fate calls her my little fox. And and this is so many stories that you get reference to. This she meets this prince who kind of chooses her at a ball to get married to, and he's just so funnily full of himself. You just laugh, because it's when she meets him the second time, I think it's the second time, by this magical tree, and he's sitting. It's going to be a party because he's going to meet all these women who he might marry. And he's sitting in this tree, it's getting painted. Someone is doing his painting while these guests are eating dinner underneath this magical tree. It's just hilarious, very hilarious. And it's kind of spicy without actually being spicy. It's more, and it's the banter between her and the prince, but mostly between her and this fate, Jax. And yeah, it's I would say probably say I like the second book best. Yeah, but as I said, it's a lot of things going on, and it's vampires. There's her stepsister. It's the prince's brother. It's there's a lot of things going on in this book, and yeah, I'll tell you more when I come to the last book, about the third book. So that was Once Upon a Broken Heart and the Ballad of Never After. And then I read a book I've been longing to read for a very long time, The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love by India Holton. She's from New Zealand, and she has written this really funny series, The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels. You might have heard of them. I read them, I think it was last summer. I love them so much. They're just hilarious, so funny. So I was really looking forward to this, and I would say it's as good. It's as good. Maybe not as heart-wrenching, because it's more light-hearted. Those books are also light-hearted, but all the female leads have like highly sensitive people, also a bit autistic, and it always gets really heartwarmed and a little bit sad when I read about that. And even if the people in this book actually also, I would say, are a bit shy of society, maybe not as much, or are they? I read this in the beginning of August. So I read this 3rd of August, so I read actually three books in 5 days. As you see, they are quite quick to read. Anyway, this is about Professor Beth Pickering, and she is looking for these rare magical birds together with an older woman who's quite horrible to her, really. And they very quickly get rivals, of course, for this magical bird. And this charming professor from Cambridge, which, I mean, how can you study at Cambridge when you can be at Oxford like she is? It's so English, it's so British. It's really funny. Yeah, so there are magical birds in this London and Oxford, kind of early 1900s, I would say. And yeah, it's just hilariously funny. I would probably say that the other series is more crazy hilarious, because they're about pirates flying in houses. It's just more crazy. But this is really crazy in another way, because there's this plot against her and this dashing young man from Cambridge. And they don't really, it takes quite a long time before they realize this, because there's suddenly this big competition for all the ornithologists to capture a specific bird. If you the one who does capture it will obviously win a lot of money, but also if you are a professor, you will get this free, I don't know what it's called, but yeah, you can easily just go on with your studying and have money to study and just do whatever you want, really. And so that's the competition, and they realize they need to work together, and there is also some men working for promoting studying at the university and studying ornithology. And there's also, I don't know if it's the same people or anyway, doesn't matter. Some of them, they just really want to have a lot of they want more people to study, and they want people to come and go on holiday in England. So that's kind of together. So they do all this crazy stuff to have, so Beth and Devon will get in the newspapers. So it's quite hilariously stupid, because they let out this dangerous bird so they can capture him and be the hero of the day, and this happens over and over. I really like this. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It's romantic, it's funny, it's totally crazy, and I really look forward to the next book, which will be about magical geography. I don't know when that's out. Maybe next year? I'm not sure. Anyway, loved it. And then I read like a typical summer book. It's called, in Swedish, it's called Kvällskurs I italienska, but that's not its English name. Lucy Diamond, One Night in Italy. I thought this would be like an easy, sweet rom-com. I mean, it looks like it, right? It's quite a sad book, actually. I mean, it does have a happy ending, but the tragic stories take a lot of space in this book. And because it's about an evening course in Italian, I assumed that at some point they will actually go to Italy, which two of them do, but it's a very small part of the book. It's more about English city in Yorkshire, I've forgotten which, but it's about 3 different women, and I gave it 4 stars. It was totally fine, but it wasn't amazing, and it was more sad than I assumed it would be. So that's that. And then I read Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. I gave this 4 stars as well. It was really sweet. It's a romantic kind of, I thought it would be like Jane Austen time, but it's later than that. It's I think it must be, when is it set? It's 1879. I'm not really sure when. It's more what's the word? It's more serious than it looks like. It's quite a lot about politics, actually, at least in the beginning of the book. It's about this young woman called Annabel Archer, who is one of the first female students at Oxford University. So this is also at Oxford, and but it's the suffrage movement who has helped her to not to get the place, but to pay for her place. So in thanks for that, she has to join the movement, obviously, and try to make men to vote for this specific law that would give women the right to not to vote, but to inherit. So it's quite a lot about that, and I found really interesting. And then it's a romantic story about bringing down the Duke. Well, getting the Duke, I would say. So it's very romantic. It's spicy, not overly spicy, but it is. And yeah, it's Sebastian Devereux. He is very cold and calculating, the most powerful duke in England. He is quite cold, which I found kind of unnecessary. But I mean, he's not cold towards her. Oh, he is in the beginning, and he's very worried about his brother, who's just not behaving himself at all, because he's not doing his studies. He's just drinking and gambling. So he thinks he should take away from Oxford and send him out in the army, which of course he doesn't want to do at all. So there's a lot about that as well. And the problem is, I mean, Annabelle is not a lady. She's the daughter of a priest, and she has had a quite sad story. You get to know a little bit during the book what her story is, really, what's happened to her. And yeah, I liked it. And if you want to know a little bit more about the suffrage movement, this is kind of an interesting way to read it. I'm sure there are other books that are better about that, but yeah. Anyway, and then I read my next 5-star read, Susanna Kearsley, A Desperate Fortune. I read another book by her, I think it was in June, May or June? No, May. Sorry, it's gone from my head. I have it written here, of course. I've talked about her earlier book before in an earlier. It's something about the sea anyway. It doesn't matter, but I love that book so much. That was from the library, and this is also from the library. So, and they only have one more. So, and I'm not allowed to buy any more books. I have bought some books this summer. There are some I want to buy, but well, this is so good. I think I loved the first book a bit more than this. I can't really say why. Well, I think I know why, but I can't tell you too much because I think you should read it. But it's also set in our time and in history, but this, instead of being set in Scotland as the other book, this is set in France mostly, and in England. And in our time, we have Sarah, who's an amateur code breaker, and that's not what she's working with. And her cousin, who behaves like an aunt to her, really, she tells her about this job because, yeah, she needs a new job. And you get to know through the stories that she has autism. But yeah, they talk about Asperger. But for me, when I read it, I mean, you don't give an Asperger diagnosis anymore. It's autism. And while reading this book, I would say it's more towards that line. Anyway, but it's really well depicted, and as I read in the end of the book, the author have family that also has autism, so she obviously have quite a lot of insight to it, which I really felt in this book. So her cousin takes her to France to meet this woman who lives in kind of a small castle, really. She has found a diary written in code, and this is this English author who wants to have it translated. So he is paying her to do the translation, but he he has a history with this French woman, so he actually doesn't join them. Anyway, so while she finds the code to break it, you get to read the story of the lady who wrote it, and that is Mary, who is daughter to Scottish Jacobites, well, her father, and so she's lived her whole life in France because they moved there because of rebellion. Oh, sorry. So it's quite a complex story about the Jacobites. I learned some in the first book, and now I've learned even more, like because the Scottish king, or he's actually the British king, according to him, James. I always wonder why are they called Jacobites, but it's apparently Jacob is the Latin word for James, or the other way around. James is the English word for Jacob. So that's why they're called Jacobites. So I learned that in this book. And this young girl, Mary, she's been brought up with her aunt and uncle for some reason. Her mother's dead, and but her father lives in Italy, in Rome, with her brothers. So she's always felt a bit left out. And so when suddenly her brother arrives, they're going back to this French city where they grew up. It's at the court. But when James the king, when he lived in this court in France, she lived there too. And it's a very intriguing story about how she gets involved in hiding a Scottish man from the English, really. And yeah, because she thinks she's going to join her family, but her brother kind of deceives her, because he says, "Oh, we need to visit a friend of mine first." And so they stay there, and then he leaves her and tells her they need her help in this course of helping this Scottish man, and he's not there. But she gets to meet a spy who teaches her how to write in code. So that's why her diary is written in code. And yeah, it's a really, really good, intriguing story, and quite sad. Really sad. Mostly her story is sad. I would say that Sarah's story is quite sad too, but not as much. I would say Mary's story is more sad because she's a woman in the, which year is it? 1732. I mean, it's quite different to be a woman during that time, because she's so left out to people who, yeah, needs to take care of her, really. She can't go her own way. But she always wanted to leave the little village where she's brought up, so she gets to do that, but not maybe in the way she wanted to. But she goes to Paris to pretend to be a sister to this Scottish man who's hiding from the English. And yeah, it's this adventure from there. And when they actually do find him, they have to run away again. So it's always this going further and further and further. And so it's quite dramatic. And when they are in Paris, she sees this man in a window on the other side of the street, and she thinks he's one of the spies looking for the man she's helping. And me as a reader was like, maybe he's one of the Scottish helping him. And I was right. So when things just goes wrong, he turns up and say, we have to leave now. And she's really angry at him because he kills a man in front of her. So she, of course, is in shock and really angry. But she realizes quite quickly that he's a good guy, even if he's very severe. And I really, really love her writing and the complex situations and love story. And I really like that love stories are not in many books. There's also things that are going really good, and then there's a complication, the misunderstanding, and it's just too dramatic. And she doesn't do that. I like that. Of course, there are things that are going wrong, but not because of miscommunication. And I really like that there's no. Well, actually, there is in this book. Yeah, Mary has a big fantasy, a big imagination. I mean, so she kind of does take a lot of conclusions that are not really right. But this, I mean, she's very young. I think she's 17, maybe. I'm not really sure. But yeah, it's really good. Read it. Then I read another book, also a Lucy Diamond book. Summer in Brighton is called in Swedish, but I don't think that's the English title. It's The House of New Beginnings. I like this much better than the other book by her. I've had this in my bookshelf for years, actually. Like, oh, this will be a good summer read, and then it's just been waiting. And this is obviously set in Brighton, and it's about a lot of different women living in the same house. So they get to know each other. They're all very alone, I would say. One of them has just moved there because her boyfriend got a job there. She didn't really want to leave Yorkshire, so she's quite alone. The other one has left a horrible relationship, and yes, that's little sad stories, but these women help each other and they become friends, and it's just, it's a really sweet story about friendship, I would say, and about Brighton. I must say, it's really paint a fun, open feeling about this city. I've been there once when I was a teenager on a choir camp. I must say it was fun. I think I'm not really fond of places with a lot of people running around, and this seems to be that kind of place. But it's fun to read about. Let's see. I gave it 4.2 stars. So yeah, it's totally fine and really sweet, and I cried. I cried even, of course, more in the book I already talked about. Yes, I'll go on. The next book is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, which was for a book club I'm in. And I have read most of her earlier books, but I haven't read her most recent books. But yeah, because I read the Shadow and Bone series, and that I read all her fantasy series in the fantasy world. But this is set in Spain during the time of what's it called? The horrible. What's it say here? Sorry. Well, it's set in Madrid. I guess it must be like 12, 13. No, sorry, I don't know when it's set. Yeah, during the Inquisition time. That was the word I was looking for. So it's quite it's a horrible time in Spanish history. Yes. And read at the end of the book that Leigh Bardugo's ancestors left Spain during this period. At least some of her ancestors, some stayed. And but so it's not a fantasy book in that way, but it's still about magic. You can see on the cover, it's spooky. It's about this young woman, Lucia Cotado, who works as a maid in a house, in a not a rich, very rich family with some money, and she can perform little miracles. At least that's what she thinks. She can perform magic with spells that she's been taught by her aunt. Her family is Jewish, and because of the Crusades, the Inquisition, it's they have that very hidden that they're Jewish. They pretend to be Christians. She's been brought up to go to church and read the prayers and stuff, and so it's a lot of little different layers, I would say, in this book. So by accident, the woman she works for realizes she can do magic. And I get so annoyed at this woman because, I mean, there are these Inquisition people around, but she is only like, oh, you can do magic. You will help me to become more popular. So she invites friends having to have dinner with them, and then when the dinner is over, Lucia is brought up to show them a little miracle, which is really crazy. And during one of these dinners, I think most of the people there just thinks it's an illusion, not real, but there is a man who is there, and he realizes it is real magic. And he and his familiar, who is kind of a magic person, a very special person, they come back and tell her that this really powerful, very rich man will help her to win the competition for the king. The person who wins the competition will be the king's magician, kind of. But it's not it's not the king who's holding the competition. There's his old secretary who's been cast out. So there's a lot of politics going on. And but this familiar, his name is it doesn't say here, but he doesn't teach Lucia magic because she already knows magic, but he helps her to make it stronger. Somehow his magic makes her magic stronger. It's not really explained how, why, but the more you know about him and his curse, I would say, it is a curse, the more you get to know about him, the more you understand him. And it is a love story. As quite often in her books, there's this man who's several thousand years old have a love relationship with a young girl. But it's not annoying. I mean, it's not like definitely not at all like Shadow and Bone, because he's really nice to her. He's never cruel to her. I mean, he can seem cruel. You get to understand why and how people has treated him for thousands of years. So yeah, I really liked it. It's quite a slow book. It's not as like action like in her other books, but I will say I like it better than Six of Crows because Six of Crows are quite there are some things I enjoyed those books, but there are some things that I didn't like at all. It just felt very teenage silly, which I would say this is not. So yeah, I recommend this. Read it. And only 2 books left. Then I read a Swedish book, the first book in a series called The Första Skiffret. So that will be the first schiffer? Yes, the first schiffer. So it's set in Stockholm in the the beginning of the Second World War, 1940. It starts in 1940, and it's about 3 different women. It's about Elizabeth, who is brought up in a rich family in Stockholm. It's about Iris, who's fled from Estland and Estonia, and it's also about Signe, who brought up in the countryside in a quite strict religious family. So 3 totally different women who gets to work at the same place. So because they are really, really intelligent, they different ways they are brought to this place where they try to break Germans' shivers. Probably the wrong word, wrong pronunciation. I really like this book. It's you can't put it down. I mean, you see, it's really thin, so it's easy to read. It quick to read, a little bit too quick. That's my only annoyment. The thing I didn't like with this book, that you could have, because there are already 5 books out, and apparently she's planning 5 more, and I think she could have put 2 and 2 together, and you would still gobble them up. So I don't know why she's written them so short. And there's also very short chapters, so it's difficult to put it down, because like, oh, I can just read a bit more, and then you want to read a bit more, a bit more. Yeah, it's really good. It's and kind of a bit of heartbreaking. I wouldn't say it's very romantic, but there's Elizabeth who meets a man, but yeah, it's still, yeah, it's not very emotional, but it's very intriguing and interesting. It's emotional about Signe, because she had to leave her whole family because she didn't want to marry her dead sister's brother. So the worst part, she had to leave her sister's son, who feels like she is her mother, and she writes letters to him, but I think she realizes that her father just throws him away because he wants her son to forget her. So that's a really sad part of the book, I would say, but it's really sweet to see Iris from Estland, Estonia, coming to Sweden. She is half Swedish, her mother is Swedish, so she knows Swedish, but her children, her 2 boys, don't know it, but just a little bit. And she's really afraid of being sent back and doing things wrong, so when she gets this job and she gets to live in an apartment, she's like overwhelmed. Even she had a really good life in Estonia before the war, and she was a very privileged person before the war. So she still is so thankful. So yeah, I've already started the 2nd book, and yeah, they're really good. I'm just gobbling up. I think I read this in 2 days. Yeah. And then I finished today the last book in the Stephanie Garber's trilogy, and it's so beautiful. Look at all these little different things everywhere. And I didn't show you the map in the 2nd book, but here, because there's a new map in every book. And look at all this. It's really, really nice. I like this book a lot, but I must say I like the 2nd book better. I was hoping that all the things that we didn't get to know would be like revealed in this book. There's a lot of things, but I don't know why. Like, why does Jax always have to eat apples? He's always going around tossing apples. Probably because he's an archer, and makes you think about this old story about, hunting the apple above the head, but it's not really part of the story at all. So actually, in the end of the book, she asks him, "Why the apples?" And he tells her, "Well, I won't tell you, but it doesn't matter anymore." So we don't get to know. I wanted to know how he became a fate. We get to know why he chooses to be one, which I kind of forgot apparently, but I was reminded today by my friend who also read them. But I had forgotten it. That's yeah, but I really liked it though. Right now it feels like a 4.2 star read. Yeah, the prince is just more and more horrible in this book. Jax is not there very much. It's new people who really horrible, and yeah, I liked it. I did like it. Read them. I read them. I'm not going to talk more about them, but yeah, so pretty. And I don't know if did you see that? Look down here. It's a little cute fox. Evangeline is this little fox. So this was the books I read so far in August, and I'll get back to you about the last books I read in August later. And yeah, maybe I will be in my new home next time I see you. Bye.